All right, today we're going to jump into Polkadot and its recent auction winner, and that is Efinity, which is now going to be the engine for powering the NFT marketplace. It's going to be a fun one to watch. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back to TechPath. Let's dive into it today. If you've been watching Polkadot and the parachains, it's kind of like a Super Bowl match. You've got a lot of great projects really fighting it out. And of course, guess what wins? And that is Efinity coming in with an NFT play. And I think when you look at where Efinity has come from and also the team behind Efinity being Enjin, you can kind of start to see how this strategy is starting to play out. I want to jump over to a story here where they were talking to Gavin Wood, which is, of course, our grand master over at the Polkadot community. He had some interesting things to say in this article, but mainly the one that I wanted to pull out here was the protocol that allows arbitrary data, not just tokens, to be transferred across blockchains. This means Polkadot is a true multi-chain application environment where things like cross-chain registries, etc., computation are all possible. Polkadot can now transfer this data across public, open, permissionless blockchain. This is really what has been the key for Polkadot, really from day one, is when you look at Polkadot, the ecosystem, what they're trying to do, the blockchain element, the strategy, and also just the code itself. Remember, Kusama, sister chain to Polkadot, all of this is really leaning into all of this cross-chain componentry. And I think as we start to see engagement both with NFTs within the metaverse itself, there's going to be so much need for that kind of code set. And when you look back at what they were saying in the article, makes it possible to build applications that get permission data from private blockchain, use on public. For instance, schools private, permissioned academic could send a proof of degree verification. That's a good real world, but you could also see many verification uses like this in the financial industry, in the insurance industry, the medical industry. You can kind of see the breadth in which Polkadot could really start to move. And I think when you look at the overall side and size of where Polkadot is, I was even taken back by what I read here, and it was, even at its core, likely it's topping 2 million lines of code spread across implementation tools, interfaces, etc. And then, but still a staggering amount of coding done since last year when he estimated it around 600,000 lines of code. To me, that tells me that there is a massive amount of work that's being done on the Polkadot chain right now, and that is a good thing, because if you've got that size of developer architecture happening in real world time, and you've got all these elements that are starting to percolate to the top, including what we saw with Enjin and with Efinity, now you've got a real cool asset and capable. It's kind of like if you think about Microsoft in the early days when I was developing there was a point in which it kind of leaned in and it just took off. That's kind of where I think Polkadot is right now. And also in general with some of these projects. Let's get into the key project, and that of course is Efinity, which becomes the winner of Polkadot's 6th parachain auction. This of course is developed by Enjin. It's poised to offer solutions for the greatest challenges in the NFT space, crippling fees. This is the big one that everybody's talking about. And I think it's going to be the one that really kind of makes it a very valuable project, and also a very valuable asset class when you think of the NFTs exploding in the marketplace in 2022. Let's take a look at the auction itself just to kind of understand the crowd loan. If you don't know how the auctions work, basically this is a play on the Polkadot parachain, a side chain, so to speak. And a lot of projects, and let's go to some of the projects that have won in the past, just to give you an example. Just so you understand how Polkadot's crowd loans work, basically these are developers who are out there trying to put together a side chain within the Polkadot ecosystem, Efinity being a group of developers that are under the Enjin protocol. Enjin, of course, everybody already knows about. That team has been around for really quite a while. And the fact that they really kind of came in and pretty much doubled over, almost 2 times that of composable finance. This was one of the ones that we kind of looked at in our Polkadot video a couple of weeks ago. Actually, we did do a sentiment analysis on this. I think it was around December 15th. So make sure and check back on that video if you want to learn a little bit more about parachains, how they work, all that good stuff. We've done several on Polkadot, so check them all out. Let's jump over to Enjin itself, because it's up 5% after announcing its first collectible drop of the year. And of course, that is all tuned into what's going to be happening with Efinity. And I think we will continue to see, and you kind of see what they're talking about right here. New Year NFT, celebrate 2022, enjoy the first collectible. We'll be rewarding 10 lucky winners who collected all 3. Again, back to the point of Enjin really moving in the direction of NFTs and Efinity being the marketplace that's going to make that happen. A lot of things happening here. And really kind of the one thing that I always, ask myself and look at when we see these emerging markets is product market fit. And you've probably heard me say this term a while. Many of the developing tech companies in Silicon Valley, all those types of things that are new founders, they're trying to build a new project or a new product. The biggest thing that they have to have is product market fit. And when you have product market fit, that's when you have magic happen in any kind of industry. And if you look at what I think is probably one of the best investors out there, Kevin O'Leary, let's just take a look at what he's got to say. So he's revealing basically crypto strategy for Ethereum. Okay, that's cool. Says NFTs will be bigger than Bitcoin. And he's seeing this from a state in which we cover on this channel a lot, and that is that NFTs in-game, the NFT collectibles side of things, whether you follow us on our VV content, if you look at what's happening in the sporting industry, if you look at the evolution of socios and what's going to happen with Chili's, all of this kind of explosion is still in year 1. So we've talked about this before. This is the 2013 of NFTs in metaverse compared to the 2013 of Bitcoin and how far Bitcoin has come in that period of time. And if you look at what he's talking about here, discusses crypto investments, market bubbles, NFT, basically says his investment portfolio diversification, meme coins, non-fungible. In a recent published article, he's basically saying the entire crypto industry as a software development teams, adding that he's betting on really creative software engineers, which is going to blow up in these sectors of creativity. And we're talking about his cryptocurrency, which he talked in depth about going into things like the things he owned, including Hedera, Polygon, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, Serum, of course we know. These are the bets he's doing after and looking at some of the software teams that continue to move in that direction. We've had most of these projects on our watch list for quite some time. So I think we're aligned with Mr. Wonderful as we go into where Enjin is heading. So NFTs good for Enjin, joins the United Nations Global Compact. This is their leadership team. This is the guy that you need to look at right here, and his name is Maxim Blagov. Now, why Maxim, and why is this so important? I want you to look at his LinkedIn profile right here, and you would think, all right, he's a one-company guy. But the difference is he's been one company for 14 years, meaning this guy is really at the birth of the technology that was being born during the early stages of cryptocurrency, blockchain, and eventually what would become NFTs. So that kind of power, it's kind of, if you think about Steve Jobs and the element, and I don't necessarily compare him to Steve Jobs, but if you look at Steve Jobs and what he was trying to do in the early days of Apple, when everybody else was pointing the other direction in terms of operating system, this is kind of where I see Enjin. They've been around for a long time. They continue to strive and continue to develop, and then they go out and win this, which I think is one of the biggest pushes for NFTs in the marketplace out there this year. Efinity, if you look at where they're going right here, so let's take a look here. This is coming right there from the Enjin website. Already live in the blockchain-enabled world, utilizing NFTs, historically been difficult to do across barriers. So again, addressing that issue on cost. Enjin's vision to build scalable cross-chain, again, aligned with Gavin Wood's cross-chain strategy. Of course, this is where it ties in, making, creating, using, and trading NFTs more accessible. This is going to be empowering mass adoption. That's going to be a significant role, I think, in what they're talking about here is the volume of trade and adoption itself. And that is the point when we talk about these things on this show is many people say, well, Paul, this is great, but I can't get to most of the stuff you talk about. And you have to really go in and deep dive into the research. You've got to either go in and buy on exchanges and or MetaMask portfolios that are much more difficult and more entry-level challenged. And that is where I think a lot of these projects that are going to come out, like Efinity and like what Enjin is trying to do, to really make this a much better reality. And I think that's going to be the key in 2022, especially in metaverse and NFTs, is adoption and the companies that are going to make that happen. Let's jump into just kind of the charts themselves. And this is kind of just a quick story on network effects. It's a hub of non-fungible tokens. Paratoken standard accepts from other chains, including the popular ERC 721. Just shows the idea of cross-chain analysis here and cross-chain usage. Tokens don't need to be listed for sale or even exist on the network or receive a bid. In fact, you can be compensated for initiating bid orders, ask orders, as described in the marketplace section that they're talking about on Efinity, and kind of just the growth of where this is going. So their tech is really kind of going in a direction where we're going to see that cross-chain utilization. We're going to see a lot lower cost of fees, and that is the key there that's going to enable adoption. So let's take a look at Efinity and where it's been, and then we'll also take a look at Enjin and also Polkadot. So right here is CoinMarketCap, Efinity, and you can kind of see it's been in the red for quite some time, and this is, I think, it's coming out time. So you see, even though right now we have not seen a real move on this, and I think we won't see a massive move on this just yet until we see some things happening within the ecosystem and them starting to build on this. Remember, the crowd loan just ended, so if you are looking at trying to get something early, this is about as low as you're probably going to see Efinity in the coming months. And of course, I think this is where we'll probably end up having more data on Efinity to give you kind of a direction. Let's take a look at Enjin and where we were pointing at on these, because these, of course, we've been tracking quite some time. Last time we pulled Enjin was back here in early December. We had a 71 and a 68. AMP was a little low, which indicated that we had good sentiment, but amplification was falling. And that's what happened to the token, is we had a little bit of a fall off right there. Let's see what that crush was down to here. So 27%, which was definitely picked up by our indice. The thing that's interesting now is if you look at where it's growing right here, let me zoom up on this a little bit to give you guys a little bit better look. It does identify that there is a dip coming here, which is going to be interesting because this right here is starting to move a little bit, but we see this little bit of a trough right here before we see some up movement right here on Enjin. So again, I think Enjin is getting, one, recognized for what their work is doing, and also two, I think they are now looked at most likely as a major player in where this might be going. So good news for Enjin. If you're an Enjin holder, I think you're going to see some move and some action. Polkadot is the other one. We pulled the last sentiment data set we pulled on November 15th, which if you look back on our videos, that was when we actually gave you the video with the track record before what we're seeing right now. And of course, you've got the indice right there reporting, and we actually right there kind of called that little bit of a dip. Then we started to see it move. We saw this right there on the top of that high, and then a little bit of a lull and flatness. But we do see some movement moving up right now on Polkadot. We could see Polkadot right here at the $43 mark, up from 29. And I think Polkadot has been one of those that has really yet to pop. And we've talked about this many times on the show. So lots of things happening here with Enjin, Polkadot, and of course Efinity, all of it becoming somewhat of a trifecta when it comes to the evolution of NFT marketplaces and how those are going to play out. Remember some of the big ones out there that we're already starting to see. And if you think about things like Illuvium and just kind of the evolution of what we're going to see with Immutable X and where that might play out with Vivi, all of these projects have a lot of similarities but different. And there's going to be several winners. That's the cool part of this. There's going to be a lot of winners in this ecosystem. Remember, in the early stages of any of these things that are tech-oriented, the crowds come in and the cream will always rise to the top. So you've got to pay attention very closely as the cream starts to rise to the top. All right, so you guys are listening in over on the podcast right now. Thank you so much for the kudos over there. But the best thing to do, of course, is jump in right here on the YouTube channel. We've got a lot of new stuff coming, including, matter of fact, we're working on a new gaming studio you guys are going to love. It's right next door. We're going to be dropping a lot of game and NFT topics this year. Be on the lookout for all that. If you want to jump in on the Diamond Circle, it's where we drop a lot of our insights, our indices, and some of our forecasts. You can do that, of course, for free. If you want to reach me, hit me up on Twitter @Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.